that you can all hear me. I had a little technical difficulties in the beginning, and just wanted to make sure that I am on and live. And if you can hear me, feel free to comment and let me know so that I'm not just talking to myself here. But today, let's see, I'm going to be going through some. I guess the topic of today is closing a deal, right? And so, I'm looking forward to talking with people about how to close a deal and what we do to close self-storage deal. So, before we get started here, I'm just kind of setting up, and then we'll get into it. So, welcome everybody. If you can hear me, please just let me know. If you got any, if you can just type in the comments, if you just say that you can hear me, that would be great. And then I can go ahead and get started on today's topic. And so welcome everybody to Self-Storage Investing live stream with Powell Chi here. We're here to talk today about closing a deal and the kind of a case study on closing my latest deal. Hey, appreciate it. Let's see. Hey, there's Kago. What's going on, Kago? How you doing? Okay, appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me know. Great. So, wanted to let's see, talk about today's particular topic. It's closing a deal. So my latest deal that I closed was about a month and a half ago. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations that you go through as you're closing a deal. Now, I'm not going to talk about like returns and projections, things like that. But I'm going to talk about when you're actually running a deal and when you're actually inside of the deal, what are some of the things that you go through and that you have to, these hurdles that you have, and then you have to overcome these hurdles. And what are some of those hurdles? I'm not going to be able to name every single type of hurdle that you're going to come across, but I do want to let you know the things that came across in my deal. And so that way you're a little aware of, what you may face in your particular deals. Okay. And it's a little bit of like an insider look of, sort of things that go on beyond, behind the scenes. Okay. So let me just push this out today. So again, today's topic, case study of closing this 55,000 square foot Class A property that we did. All right. So for those of you who are here, I always just like to start off by just asking people where they're from. So let me know where you're from, where you're clocking in from today. If you're coming in from the East Coast, the West Coast. I know I have a lot of people on the West Coast, but let me know where you're coming in from, and let me know some of the things that you're doing right now. I just wanted to start off by just saying, like, what are you doing right now to help yourself, like, propel you in this real estate investing world to move forward. Some of the things that you might be doing, analyzing deals, you might be setting off LOIs, you might be putting things under contract. So what are the things that you are doing right now? I know in the last week, I just took a look at some of our statistics, and we analyzed about 20 deals on our end. So we have about 20 deals that we analyzed. A lot of them you just kind of throw away, but we gave feedback to about 5 of them. We're probably going to give feedback to, I don't know. I'm a little behind on this. So I need to give feedback to probably about 15 of these ones. But I did send off one LOI today. So I feel pretty good about, hey, when you start sending off LOIs, I usually feel like, hey, we're close. We're close initially. So that's where I'm at right now. And hopefully we'll get another deal under contract pretty quickly here. So if you have done anything recently, love to hear about what you're doing and the things that you're doing to propel you to move forward. Agenda that you can see today is what we're going to be talking about. After I talk about the case study, we'll get into some Q&A. I think that a lot of people really like to hear Q&A, like what's and you can ask anything really about Q&A. So it can be topics on storage, can be topics on multifamily, it can be topics on lending, how to find deals, how to find partners, anything. It doesn't have to be on really today's topic. So if you do have a question, put it in the chat, and that way I can answer them at the end and go through all the questions. Okay. All right, perfect. So, just really quickly, as far as like personal background, have a multifamily background, come from the multifamily side, been a general partner on several different syndications. And when COVID came about 2 years ago, almost exactly, I opened myself up to a different asset class. And that asset class happens to be self-storage, right? And really took a deep dive into learning about self-storage. I didn't really know much about it except for things like this, where I'd listen to people talk about self-storage and hear that, hey, it's a great investment and there's no toilets and there's no tenants and, just kind of things like that, right? But I didn't know how to analyze it, didn't know how to manage them, didn't know how to underwrite them and find them. So that was all a learning experience. Ended up closing on my first self-storage deal a little over a year ago, so which is January of 2021. So that's about 14 months ago, right? So I owned my first one 14 months ago, and then I closed on 5 more in the month of July. So that brought me a total of 6 total properties in 2021 that I closed on with my team. We closed on, and number 7 is what we're going to talk about today. So number 7 was a syndication that I did, closed in February of 2022. So I had it under contract during 2021, but I like to say this is my first one in 2022. So far total, I've got about 1,700 units. It's about 220,000 square feet of self-storage, all of it being outside of California. So although I live in Los Angeles, all of my investments are outside of California. And that's, I know it took me a little while to get my head wrapped around that you can invest outside of California, but that's, I think, one of the great things about real estate investing in the United States is that you can invest really anywhere. And I just happen to invest outside of California, but I know a lot of investors that do invest inside of California here. Now, why don't we get on to today's topic? Okay, so today's topic, as you can see, scrolling down the bottom there, is really a case study on a 55,000 square foot Class A self-storage property. I wanted to show some pictures, but I'm a little late today, so I wasn't able to really show some pictures. But you might have seen it on the email that I sent around if you got this, right? Now, this self-storage facility, just to give you some background about it, it was an abandoned brewery. Let me say, it's located in Houston, Texas, MSA. Okay, so it's located in the MSA. It's in Galveston, and so if you know where Galveston, it's an island in the Bay. In the Texas, in the Houston area. So on this island, there was a brewery, and this brewery had been abandoned since 1986, and so it had been abandoned for quite some time. And then the person who was the seller, he's a developer. He came along and he bought the property and then divided it up. And this part of the brewery he turned into a self-storage facility. So it is 5 stories. It's all concrete. And at the time that he took it over, it's great to see all these old pictures, because he has all these. We have all these great pictures of the facility before it was renovated, and the facility was just what you'd think of abandoned for almost 30 years. Just a lot of vandalism, a lot of the crumbling walls, and things like that. But now it's super nice, right? The conversion was completed in 2019. So conversion was completed in 2019, very recent. There's an event center on the very top of it. That's an event center that's used as an event center right now, but it's going to be a restaurant pretty soon. So it has a full kitchen, full dining area, full bar, outdoor patio where they have live music and all kinds of just cool events. And it's pretty weird to think of an event center, like a high-end one, on top of a self-storage facility. So that's pretty unique. And so that's one thing that attracted us to it, is that we thought was really cool. So right next door to this self-storage facility, also kind of on the brewery, the old brewery is being converted, is a $25 million hotel going in, right? So it's a hotel going in. So it's actually the seller is building this really nice hotel. And part of it was, his idea was that he was going to use the restaurant, the 5th floor that we have, as the restaurant for the hotel. So we have an agreement that's worked out between us where he's renting that from us. So that hotel, that's $25 million hotel that's next door, that's being built, And I believe it should be done at the end of this year, so the beginning of 2023. And they are going to rent our restaurant for us, and then we have a 10-year lease on it, right? So we have a 10-year lease with a 10-year option. So it's like almost like a 20-year lease on there. So I feel really great about that. 100% climate controlled, and this being on an island, Galveston Island, and you kind of hear about flooding and all kinds of different things there. Well, the first floor of this facility is actually starts at 8 feet above ground level. So you have to like walk up this ramp or up these stairs in order to get to the first floor. So if it does flood, and it floods, anything below 8 feet, I guess, it's basically hitting just the concrete blocks and just the outer structure. There's nothing, it's not going up to the interior. Yeah. So it's pretty nice how it was all designed. And, just one of the sort of benefits of, forward thinking about how to construct this property. So let's get into the acquisition side of it, right? Now, when you're looking at acquisitions and you're looking at how to buy these properties, that one of these questions that always comes up that I get from people is, how do you find these facilities, or how do you find a self-storage property? And for me, it's always done through brokers. So this one was also done through a broker. Now, sometimes it may be listed and sometimes it may be off market, but for me, it's always done through brokers. So this one happened to be listed. So it was listed, and I saw it. Probably so did 100 and something other people. I don't know, however many people saw it. But in my process, we analyzed the deal, we looked at it, and we thought, this deal is where it sits right now is at the price range was not where we wanted to come in at, right? It was just listed a little higher than what we thought, right? And a lot of times, and actually I would say it's actually listed quite a bit higher than what we thought. And a lot of times when you have these, you're asking for such a steep discount, sometimes you don't get it. And a lot of times you don't get it. And a lot of times it's such a big discount that it's almost embarrassing to make that offer. But so we put in an offer, and it was basically $2 million less than the purchase price, right? And it was $2 million. Well, we actually put $2.5 million. They countered at $2 million, and we said, okay. So we came back and said, yeah, this will be fine. So we settled on a price that was $2 million less than what their listing price was. And that's just part of the game. Is like for us, we don't have really much emotion behind it. I think a lot of people get really emotional. Sometimes it's the brokers. They get emotional because they put the numbers out there. And if they're really attached to that number, like, hey, I did a great job of evaluating this, and that's what the number should be. Sometimes they get a little emotional when you tell them like, hey, I'll come in at this price. And they're like, they get mad. So I don't know. You just kind of have to take it as like, hey, this is what we come in at. This is what we evaluate the deal at. If that's good, cool. And we'll move forward. If it's not, then you just kind of like say it's a numbers game. I got so many deals to go through. So I'm not really worried if the broker says, hey, you're not even close. I'm like, okay, no big deal. I'll move on to the next one. So that's a little bit like as the acquisition. It sounds simple enough, right? It's basically call a broker, evaluate the deal, find out what you would be willing to pay for it, and then send over some feedback to the broker. This is what we come in at. If they tell you, yes, you're close, then you start to, really hone in on what that number would be. If they tell you, sorry, you're not even close, we got 10 offers that are all, $2 million higher than yours, you basically just throw it away and just move on, right? You just don't worry about it. If you really like it, you can come back to it later, but you obviously know that you're nowhere near the price that it's going to sell at. So, so don't get too emotionally attached. That's my general feedback is that you got to put out these numbers, you got to put out these offers to people and give the brokers feedback, but just don't get emotionally attached to it. And if a broker gets mad at you or gets upset at your price, then just don't worry about it too much. It's not a big deal. All right. Let's get into the structure of it. So we're talking about like the structure of how we structured this deal, because here's where we start to get to the nitty gritty of the case study. Okay. So we did it as a syndication. So for those of you that don't know what a syndication is, but I mean, it's basically like you're pulling together people's money, and together as a whole group, you're going out and purchasing the property, right? Within the syndication, there are general partners and there are limited partners. So it's two different classes of investors. The general partners are the team that is actively doing it. So they're going to be finding the deal. They're going to be raising the capital for the deal. They're going to be operating the deal. They're going to be doing all of the activities on the throughout the property. The limited partners are really the passive investors, right? And that's the class of investors where you can just sit back and say, hey, I'm putting in money, putting in some capital, but I'm not going to be involved. I don't have the time. I don't have the skill level. I don't, maybe I want to learn, or maybe I don't want to learn. It's kind of, you have a number of different limited partners as far as what their goals are, right? Some just have money and they just don't have enough time. They just like the deals or they like the general partners and they want to move forward. So that's a little bit of the distinction between general partners and limited partners. Many of you probably already know something like that, or maybe I've heard what a syndication would be like. So this is what we did. We did a syndication. We have, I don't know, there's probably 70 people on this whole deal or something like that. We have a good amount of partners throughout this whole deal. Now, we did structure it as a Delaware entity. So it's a Delaware entity, and then it's registered in the state of Texas. Here's where we start to get into obstacles. Okay, so registered in the state of Delaware. Delaware being one of the most business-friendly states in the whole United States, right? Has its own court system for businesses, all kinds of benefits of registering in Delaware. So this was in November that we started the process, right? And once you get your name or your entity, you can basically start the process of getting the entity created, right? Your lawyer is going to work on the rest of the documents, but just getting the entity created is usually fairly fast. As long as you know the name of the entity, and especially in a state like Delaware, it would seem like it would take maybe a day, right? However, we did it, and we had our lawyer do it, and all of a sudden it was just taking so long. Like, where's this entity? Like, how come the entity isn't being created? And then we found out it was almost 3 weeks to 4 weeks later that we say, where is the entity? Like, not only do we have one entity, we have multiple entities here. So we have our general partnership has an entity, the borrowing, we have a borrowing entity here that is going to be the borrower of the, and it's going to be owning the property on title. And we're like, we have multiple entities here, but why are they not being created? And then we found out through the legal team, they're like, oh, Delaware is on a backlog of getting these entities created. And we're like, okay, so, but we've had it for 3 weeks now. I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, they haven't come across your date yet. So they're still working on it. So this lasted through all of November, and we're getting into December, and we're at about almost the middle of December. And we're like, where's our entity? We're now talking over a month that we have tried to get this entity created, and we can't move forward with, they told us that, hey, you have to create one entity first because the way we did it, you have to create one entity first, and then you can create the other entity once the first one's created. And I'm like, if this first one is taking over a month, how long is it going to be to create the second one? And then they told us, oh, well, if you want, we can expedite it. And I said, if we want, what is the question here? This has been going on for over a month, and now you're asking if we want to expedite this? Yes, expedite it. What's the deal? What is this? How do we expedite it? And they say, well, it's to expedite it, it would be $50 more. And we were like, I couldn't believe it. $50. I mean, $50, do it. Why did it take so long to spend $50 to get this thing done? And so that was pretty upsetting that it took over a month to figure out hey, maybe we should expedite this for $50 more. And it's we're about to buy this multi-million-dollar property here. It's more, and and we're worried about this $50 expediting fee. Just do it. And so that was kind of frustrating, as you can see, frustrating. So, as you're working with your legal team, you come across these kind of things, and you need to be you need to be on track with like things. So this is the one thing we weren't, right? We were relying on the legal team to get this thing done, but we needed to be like on top of them, just saying, hey, it's been 2 days. Why isn't the entity created? It's been 3 days. Where's our entity? It's been 4 days. Where's our entity? And then like finding these things out earlier that, hey, well, you can expedite it, and it wouldn't have taken us, over 5 weeks to get that done. So when part of this is like when you're working with your legal team. All right. And we've gotten much more savvy at how we work with our legal team. And maybe we're getting to the point where, I don't know, maybe legal teams don't necessarily like working with us, because we're a lot more like strict now. We're a lot more like, hey, this has to be done on time. And like, what is your timeline? And so when you are working with your particular legal team, I would suggest there are a couple of things that you need to ask or figure out, or help you figure out who to work with, right? And so some considerations. Now, some of the considerations are, do you work with a legal team that is one person and they specialize in this? Or do you work with a legal team of people that is a group of people, and maybe you're not, your project might get passed to some other person other than who you actually interviewed, right? So there's some consideration here of like, if you work with a single person, obviously they're gonna be the person that's gonna be working on your deal from start to finish. If you work with a team of people, well, sometimes when you work with a team, everybody else thinks that everybody else is doing something, and nobody actually gets that stuff done. So you wonder what's better. I don't really know. We've gone back and forth with this, and sometimes we've had success or not success. I don't know what the opposite of success is. We've had failure, not quite failure, but we've had issues with both sides, both ways. But I'll tell you that if you're working with somebody that's just a single person, that's just one person shop, man or woman, you want to ask them things like, around the holidays, right? We're talking November, December. Are they going to go on vacation? And if they're going to go on vacation, what's going to happen with your deal? Like, who's going to be on top of your, getting things done? Because that's a big consideration, right? Like, they have to know that they either can't go on vacation, or if they are on vacation, they need to be able to respond to you, and you need to be able to respond to them, right? Because your contract doesn't care that they're on vacation or that it's the holidays, right? So that's something to question. And even when it's not the holidays, I mean, I've had lawyers go on vacation and you can't get a hold of them. And I mean, it was a different deal. It wasn't this one, but they went on vacation, and I was bombarding their email with like, hey, what's going on? We need this document. Where are you? We haven't heard anything, this and this. Every day I was just like, what's going on? And then after a week, he writes me back like the next week, and it's like, hey, I was sorry, I was out of office. I didn't put my out of office on. And I was like, well, that's not good. I mean, you don't tell us that you're going to be on vacation, and then you don't answer anything for a week, right? I mean, if we're lucky, we weren't closing during that time. I don't know. Obviously not the type of person I want to work with the next time, but that's what happens. You want to ask about methods of communication. Okay. So how do they want to communicate? Some lawyers are going to be okay with you getting their cell phone, and you can text them. And so that way you can have this communication back and forth, instantaneously. Some are going to be like, hey, just email me. That's it. And some are going to say, I don't do Zoom calls, or, that type of thing. Or they have, technologically, they don't want to do Zoom calls, and you need to do a Zoom call because you need to show them, like on the documents, where to mark things up. So you need to ask, what are the methods of communication, so that you're not thinking that you can just get their cell phone number and they're going to say, no, I don't want to give you my cell phone number. Right. Speed is another consideration. Like, how fast are they going to get these things done? It doesn't take, sometimes it's like such simple things that need to get done. And you're like, why does it take a week? Why does it take a week to get, like, I don't know, the edits back? Like, the edits are simple and should be done. So, you want to know about the speed and how fast. All right. And everybody's going to tell you they're going to be fast, but you need to like prod a lot of questions about speed. And if they don't meet that certain timeline, then what? right? If they tell you that they're going to get something to you by Friday and they don't, then what? How are you going to be able to communicate with them? Are you going to be able to, text them and ask them, are they going to work on the weekend? You need to ask these questions up front. And obviously cost, cost is, just doesn't really need explanation, but you're going to ask about cost. So back to this deal and working on this particular deal. In this deal, I actually had 3 lawyers on this deal. Now, I've never had 3 lawyers on a deal ever. I've never had to work with 3 lawyers. I thought that was ridiculous. I'm not talking about 3 lawyers from the same firm. I'm talking about 3 separate lawyers doing 3 separate things. Totally different, right? Totally, one was in, I think, Baltimore. The other one is in New York, and the other one was in Texas, right? And it's just kind of like, I got 3 different lawyers that I'm working with. It's crazy, because you also got to pay all of them, right? But they all did different things. So who were the 3 lawyers? I had a syndication attorney, right? So they worked on the syndication. So they're getting me the operating agreement, the subscription documents, and PPM, all that stuff, right? Then I had a lender's attorney, right? So a lender's attorney who works with just the closing with the lender. And I had never had a lender representative, representative for the lender. So that was new to me, that we actually had to have an attorney there to, when we're on our calls with a lender. That was new to me. But I was glad she was there. She did great. And then the third one was like, when I mentioned that we have a rooftop restaurant, right? We have that restaurant. Well, we have a lease for it. Well, we need a Texas attorney who is familiar with leases and, does write-ups for leases to do that. So, I mean, yes, you could use probably the real estate, the Texas Realtors Association. It's a standard one, but, I don't know how often you're just going to want to use a standard thing like that on this type of property. So we didn't want to use a standard one. We wanted to use with our attorney, but I mean, we had 3 different attorneys working on this property. Okay. So that's a lot about the structure and the attorney and the legal side. I'll get into the lender side. Okay. And talk about what we're doing on the lending side. And, okay. So what type of lender do we have? We had a CMBS lender on this one. So because this property, we're talking this property is like over $10 million. We didn't want to go to a bank. We want to go to CMBS because CMBS, for those of you who are not familiar with CMBS means commercial mortgage-backed security. A lot of times it's like the really big Wall Street banks. So you're, the big ones, you're talking, I don't know, like Morgan Stanley and probably Goldman Sachs, those type of big ones, those big banks. And so this is, they will lend for you. They have different terms. So it's similar to like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, where it's non-recourse. But there's no Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac in self-storage. So you're looking for CMBS type of lenders. You're looking for life insurance. There's life insurance companies that will lend for you. And those are, the major ones that you're looking at for this property is this size. So what did we get? We got 65% LTV, which in multifamily, you guys are probably like 65%. That sounds terrible. You guys are able to leverage like 75, 80, even sometimes a little higher than 80% LTV in multifamily. Well, self-storage, probably not. I would say you're probably somewhere in the 65 to 70% LTV. Maybe you can get higher, but the rates will go up significantly. All right. We got a 5-year term, 5 years interest only. So, hey, we like that. 5-year term, 5 years interest only, 65% LTV. Okay, we can work with that. Prepayment penalty is defeasance. If any of you are on here and know what defeasance is, you're smarter than I am, because I had to sort of look it up many times. It's like, what's defeasance, right? What's the difference between defeasance and yield maintenance? Anybody know that? Okay, that's a question for you right there. What's the difference between yield maintenance and defeasance? I know now, but I certainly didn't really know it back then. But okay. In other words, you just have to know defeasance it's a heavy prepayment penalty. It's a big one. So is yield maintenance. They're big. So if we sell this property or refinance or do something before that 5-year period, we're going to owe a lot of money. So we're kind of in this loan for at least that 5-year period. And then we'll see after that. Okay. What was the interest rate? So when we started with this property, it was, like I said, November, and we were quoted around 4.33. That was about the time where it was like 4.33%. Those of you in multifamily, and looking at these type of properties, you're probably like 4.33 is kind of high. You're probably looking at that time you were getting maybe 3.8 or something. But we were getting 4.33, and we're pretty happy with 4.33. Anything that was below 4.5, we were pretty happy with. However, we closed in February, right? And the difference in interest rates from November to February is significant. And for those of you that have gone through it, like me, didn't really realize how much the interest rates were going to go up, because there was a lot of, in November, there was no talk about, hey, inflation going crazy and this and that. There was no real talk about that. There was like, okay, yeah, little chatter here and there. But that inflation talk started to really pick up at the new year. Inflation and backup of supply chains and this and that, all kinds of stuff that's going on. Well, that made interest rates climb significantly up. And then there was like talks about, hey, Russia and Ukraine might actually go to war. And it was like, really? I was like, that's going to affect our interest rates? And it's like, yeah, because the banks are a little uncertain. So that increased your interest rates even more. So our interest rate went from 4.33 to 5.25. That's almost a full point of percent, right? So it's like, I don't know, 0.9% or 0.9 of a percent. It's 90 basis points, right? So, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. And to go from 4.33, which we were quoted at, right? We signed the term sheet, 4.33. And then by the time we got the loan commitment, it was like, your loan commitment is actually different. It's 5.25. I was like, oh, that's a huge difference. That can kill a deal. Honestly, that can kill a deal. Many of you probably right now are thinking of that same thing. It's like, hey, I'm getting quoted right now, and I don't know what you're getting quoted at. Maybe you're getting quoted at 4.5. But you realize that other people are closing at over 5. You're thinking, wow, these interest rates are going crazy. I don't know what the interest rates are going to be in 60 days, 90 days. So yeah, I mean, we went through that. Luckily for us, that when we underwrote it, we were underwriting at about 5.0. So although it was worse than what we were underwriting, it wasn't so bad. It wasn't like we were underwriting at 4.33 and then we came in at 5.25. So it just made our returns not as good, right? Weren't thrilled about that. But it still made the deal was still good. Right? Now, what other problems did we have that we faced? Well, about a week before closing, right? A week before closing, we were all, just kind of getting ready to sign all the documents. And, there's a mad scramble at the end that you always have to do, as you're trying to close. Well, we found out that the lender was not going to allow the seller. So the seller was renting some self-storage units, right? He's not renting them for himself because he's building property next door, and he's renting the rooftop. So he has storage there that he needs, and he has actually a pretty significant amount. He had 30 units that he had. Well, the lender at that time, about a week before, decided, hey, we're not going to allow those 30 units to be counted in your NOI. And so we're not going to be allowed, we're not going to allow them to be counted as part of your income. So therefore, your loan proceeds are going to be lowered significantly. And we're going to have this earn out clause and all kinds of different things. So basically what that meant is that we had to raise $1.2 million more than we originally thought. So we were like, we have to raise $1.2 million more in the last week before we close. That's a lot. And I was not happy about that. I was very upset with that. And then, very quickly, my business partner had to say, all right, you get it all out, because we got to close this deal. So we got to make this happen. So, I mean, we went to work and we were able to do it. And that was tough. That was not easy. And that was not, we're not happy about that, but yeah, we'll basically get this $1.2 million back after we hit a certain threshold with our, basically our NOI has to hit a certain threshold. That's not going to be able to include any of the sellers units. So it's there, we can get it back. So they haven't taken it away totally, but initially they're like, well, in order to close, you guys need to come up with $1.2 million more, right? And that's not easy. And so be aware of that. Be aware of those kind of things. The seller may own, maybe renting any of the units. They're not going to be counted. You're going to want that to know that up front. And bring that to your lender's attention so that you're not counting on, or you're not surprised at the very end, right? Okay, what other things that we face? Just kind of go through them. There was like I said, mad scramble at the end to sign these documents, right? And it was, those last days of signing documents and back and forth. I mean, it's like you just get bombarded with so many emails and where you need to sign and this and who needs to notarize what. And you have to get to a notary now because the documents need to be back by a certain time. And if they're not, then you're not going to close on time. All kinds of madhouse, so those things that go on, they're pretty crazy, and they're crazy for anybody that is a loan guarantor. So any of your loan guarantors, any of your KPs, no matter what type of deal it is, they're all going to go through that. They're all going to have documents they need to sign and notarize. So you need to make sure that they are within reach of communication, as well as they're not on vacation, they're not on a cruise somewhere, because that could really kind of mess things up. So some of the other things that we had was like, okay, there was like zoning inspectors, fire inspectors that went through and looked at the property. They came back with some things that needed to be corrected, right? Some of the things are super easy. It's like, hey, there's a pipe that goes, that comes from the wall, and it doesn't have any caulking around it. It's just kind of open and exposed. It's like, okay, that's not very difficult to do. There's other things that it's like, there's too much clutter in front of the fire extinguisher. It's like, okay, so that stuff's easy. You just move the chair, all right? But they all pop up on this fire inspection report, and then the lender tells you, okay, you need to get this done before we close. And if you don't get it done, we won't close. And so I had to work out a way that like, hey, let's just do this post-close, because I can get all this done before we close, but are we going to be able to get a fire inspector out there before we close? I mean, we're talking the week before we close, right? A fire inspector out there to inspect it, probably not within that week. And then are they going to be able to get you the report back to the lender before we close? No, that's unlikely, right? So we just had to do it post-close, right? And then we had to get the lender to agree to post-close that we would do it. So we had 60 days, right? Basically, we have 60 days to close that, to get that fire inspection done and re-inspected and cleared off our list. And there was like an environmental document that was missing, or someone didn't know where it was. And that was causing an issue that went with our environmental team. And so we needed to get that done post-close as well, because there's no way that would have happened, a week before we close. And so they gave us 180 days or something like that. I mean, truthfully, we got that within like 5 days. So we found the document. Here it is. And they said, okay, fine. You don't need it anymore. So those are a bunch of things that you go through. I just wanted to, throw that out there as far as like during this case study, what are some of those things? And just make this more of a case study of like, hey, as you are doing your deal, you're going to come across all these obstacles, whether it's lending, whether it's a structure, whether it's, it could be any number of different things, and ways that you're going to maybe avoid them, or maybe be able to overcome them. Okay. And I guess the last thing for me really was, a great part of this that came out was sort of the relationship I had with the seller. The relationship I had with the seller is we were talking every day, that last week or so. And he's like, pal, you're not going to be able to close. your lender hasn't circulated the documents. And he's all, I've closed many deals and this is not going to close. I haven't seen anything. You guys are, he's all, there's no way you're going to be able to close in time. And I was like, I don't know, truthfully, but we're going to work towards it. We're going to make it done or get it done. The good thing was like, we had such a good relationship that he was like, hey, pal, even if he's all, I'm going to lean on your lender a little bit and get on a call with them and see, are they really going to close? And if they're not going to, then let's go down to my bank and let's get this deal closed. He's all, I'll introduce you to my guy. We'll give him 15 minutes to get this thing, closed, and let's get this thing closed with my guy. And so he was going to work with me, even if my lender didn't close. He was going to just introduce me to his team and close it with his bank, which I thought was really cool. You don't really have that kind of relationship with the seller, and he also has more deals that he wants to sell, or potentially that we could buy down the line. So your relationship with the seller can be super important, and in this case, certainly was important and something that looking forward to having a greater relationship with him. So that said, that is pretty much everything that I kind of ran through off the top of my head as far as like what went on during a case study of this particular deal. So now I'm going to move into the questions section. So the Q&A. So for those of you that have any questions, I would love for you to write any, your questions or your topics or, anything that you want me to cover right now. Feel free to write it in the chat. Could be about self-storage, could be about multifamily, about lending. Again, finding deals, anything that you want. I'm going to stop this little scrolling thing right now. Okay. And yeah, let me know what questions you have. I have a few questions that people wrote in, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the audience has here live. So feel free to write it in, and I should be able to see your comments, and then I'll be able to answer it. Okay. So before we get into the Q&A, I'd appreciate those of you who are here. If you would give me like a thumbs up or a like or something, it just kind of helps. And if you're interested in partnering, there's a description in the description. There's a link about, hey, if you're interested in partnering on any of my deals. Typically, like on this deal, I had about 70 people in it, but on a lot of my deals, I'm shrinking the amount of people that are going to be involved in my deals. So it's a lot smaller group nowadays. So and I don't even know if necessarily I'm syndicating them all. They're just I do deals with a smaller group of people nowadays. Okay. And, typically I would say the people that are coming into my deals are looking for a significant amount of depreciation. If that's you're looking for that depreciation, like in our deals now, we're able to give, we're able to give a lot more than I have in the past and that I see in other deals. I have a deal right that and we're able to give more than the amount of that the people invest into the deal. So they get 100%, more than 100% of the depreciation in terms of what they actually invested. All right. A couple people also asked me about questions about, hey, mentoring. I don't have an education program. I don't, this is kind of the only thing I really do as far as education wise, but I don't have any modules or, and I don't put together books or anything like that. I don't know, maybe later, but right now I don't, or I concentrate on finding deals myself. So if you're interested in a mentoring type of program where you're actually involved in my deals and come along for the ride, that's something that we can talk about. So just go ahead and, fill out the partnership link. And as far as real estate investing fund, people have asked me too. We created a fund. It's early stages right now, but if you're interested in our fund where we're investing in a diverse amount of real estate asset classes like self-storage, multifamily, short-term rentals. We do debt and equity. We do short-term and or longer-term opportunities. It's really for accredited investors only. So accredited investors only, but the minimum is only $25,000 to invest in it. So it's a good way to kind of spread your investment profile. Okay, so Q&A. So if you got any questions about self-storage or whatever it is, put them in the Q&A and we'll get started here. So what do I got? I got a Q&A. Here I got one from Karsten. Karsten had a question about automating the business. How do you automate the business? Okay, so this is a large topic. Can pretty much take a whole day or a whole session to talk about automating the business. Now, self-storage in general, I would say, is more than multifamily, is more automated, right? You can have automated locks on your doors, right? So that people can come and just use a Bluetooth type of lock. So they don't even have a physical lock. You can have automatic locks on your location. What do we do? These are things that you can do. You have automatic gates. So like to come onto your facility, you have a punch in your key code, and your key code is a personalized code so that you know exactly who is inside of your facility once. And so that's like kind of an automated feature, kind of a security system. You know when they come in, and if you have a keypad on the exit, then you know when they leave, right? And people shouldn't be there for that long, right? And so that's one of the automated features. And then really the rest is automated. What we do in terms of automation is that we make everything available online, right? So a person can go to our website. You go to our website, you can see what's available. And then you can register or reserve a spot, or you can actually just book it right online. And you upload your driver's license, you sign the documents, get them, send it in, and basically you don't need to see anybody in the office. You have everything. You got your gate code texted to you. Your gate code is texted to you. For us, we give you a free lock. So, hey, you go, you know which unit is yours. You undo the combo, and inside of there is a free lock for you. It's brand new lock, right? Brand new, sealed and everything. And then you just give us back our old lock. So we make it very, very, we make it as automated as we can. We don't go super, super automated. There's cutting edge kind of automation. We're kind of I wouldn't say we're cutting edge, but all of our properties are basically as automated as they need to be. So a person does not need to go into the office to talk to anybody to get any of this done in person. They can do it all online. You can do it all on your smartphone. You can call in and do it all from the call center. It's all pretty easy, So in terms of the difference between multifamily and storage, you're really not doing that in multifamily, right? You're not doing any kind of automated online filling out and somebody just move in whenever. You're not really doing that type of thing in multifamily, whereas you can in self-storage. All right. Okay. So what other questions do you guys have? Again, fill out, let me know inside of the chat. Let's see. We got one from Anwar. How do you find boots on the ground? Boots on the ground. So yeah, that is one of the benefits of joining groups. If typically, like inside for me, I have a big group, multifamily masters, and I'm part of several different like education programs. So I just know people in different cities and these are around those cities. And then I just find out if they're interested in being my boots on the ground. Right. So it's not any like hard science behind it. It's really like, who do I know that's in this area and that I trust to be on my team? And are they interested in being boots on the ground? Sometimes they're too busy. A boots on the ground person is probably somebody that has some time to go to the facility when you need them to go to. They can take pictures. They can oversee what the contractors are doing. They can send you videos and maybe talk to some support staff there. But they just really need to have the time available. So you need to make sure that you're finding those type of people. And if you can't find anybody, truthfully, you can just hire out those duties to people. You can maybe just hire somebody instead of bringing them on your team. You just kind of hire them, or even you can go to some things like Craigslist or TaskRabbit. I think TaskRabbit is an app, and you can just have people. You just pay them per project, right? I need you to take pictures of my facility, video and pictures, and take it of each building and take it of each door, and then I pay you $80 or something like that. I don't know. But you can do that as well, right? So that's maybe the way you find boots on the ground. Okay. Let me see another question here. I got another question that says, how do you choose a market? All right. How do I choose a market? So for me, in general, the good thing about storage is that it's, although you can although there are sort of landlord-friendly states and tenant-friendly states, storage is even more landlord-friendly than say multifamily, right? Because people in general, in the United States, I would say do not. Well, let me back up. When you're in multifamily, you're kind of bound by these eviction laws, all right, and you're under the jurisdiction of eviction laws, and eviction laws can be pro tenant, and they can be pro landlord. It depends on what state you're in. Well, in self-storage, the jurisdiction is lien laws, and lien laws are more about stuff, people's stuff, not people, right? So with lien laws, I would say most of the United States does not believe that I have the right to bring my stuff and put it on somebody's property and leave it there and not pay for it. And I have that right. And they can't do anything with my stuff. Or if for them to do something, they have to jump through a lot of hoops, right? Most people feel like, hey, if somebody leaves stuff on my property, I should be able to relatively quickly get rid of that stuff, and for storage, it goes through an auction process, right? So you go through the auction process, but it's relatively easy. It's not, you got to wait a certain amount of time. You got to put maybe your ads out, but it's relatively easy. It's a lot easier than it is eviction laws, where you're actually, dealing with people and removing them from where they used to live. So choosing a market for me, even though it's easier, lien laws are a lot easier for an owner, I still try to stay away from as many sort of landlord or tenant-friendly states as possible. I will go to. I'm in a deal right now that we're in probably a tenant-friendly state, but in general, I try to lean against away from those ones. I also stay away from places where the rents are really low. So sometimes you'll find places that you'll be like, hey, this looks like a great place. There's not that much competition here, but the rates are really low there. And when the rates are really low, a lot of times it just doesn't work to have self-storage there, or it doesn't work to. It may work to have self-storage at low rates, but if you wanted to increase the rates, it's just not going to work. It just doesn't work out too well. So I try to stay away from those type of places. And then probably the most important thing is that you want to, when you're choosing a market, you want to look at your micro market, right? The micro area where you're going to be in. It's really a 3 mile or a 5 mile radius from your facility. And in that micro market, what is your competition level like? That's really one of the most important things you need to look at. What's your competition level like? 3 miles and 5 mile radius, because you could be in a great city for investing, or even self-storage in general could be a great city. But if you're right next to a bunch of other facilities, that's not great for you. Just on the flip side of that, you can be in a city that's, well, it's overbuilt, and it's probably not a great city to go invest or build in. But if you find an area of that city that there's not much storage around, but there's still a lot of people, then that could be a good city to purchase in, right? So it's really more about the micro market. Okay. Great. So let's see. Hey, Kago, how's it going, buddy? Let me see. You got a question from you. Okay. You mentioned that the interest rate was increased by approximately 90 basis points. What about this specific asset made you still want to close on it in the end, or just instead of walking away? So, there's a lot of things about this. Great question, Kago. Appreciate it. There's a lot of things about this property that we really liked, right? And again, it went 90 basis points from what we were quoted to what we ended up closing at. The actual amount of basis points that it was different than our underwriting was about 25 basis points difference, right? So it wasn't as large of a gap between what we underwrote and what we were like projecting, right? So in our underwriting, it's never finally complete until we're really done. And then it's, that's sort of where, with underwriting, you're forecasting, right? And so in our forecasting models, we weren't forecasting what they quoted us at. We were still forecasting at 5.0, even though we closed at 5.25. So it wasn't as big of a hit, to us as it potentially could have been if we ended up underwriting our numbers at what they originally quoted us at. But in terms of the deal, right, the deal has a great amount of upside. I mean, for an A-class property, a 2019 build, there's still a lot of meat on the bone on this property because it's really been in lease-up mode this last 2 years, 2.5 years, right? Been in lease-up mode, which means heavy discounts so that they can get the place occupied, right? They're, hey, come in, we'll give you 3 months free, or 3 months 50% off, or first month free, and this and that. All kinds of different concessions and discounts. Our normal price is $200 for a 10 by 10 per month, but if you sign up now, then we'll honor you for just $100. We'll give you 50% off, and we'll honor that for at least a year or whatever. I don't know, all kinds of different concessions. So there are so many concessions on the property that it was, between 70 to 80% full. However, there's so many concessions that all we kind of have to do is really burn off a lot of the concessions, get that occupancy from 70 to 80 to up to 85 or even higher percent. And there's so much meat on the bone just in doing that we can basically, that's where we say we're going to be able to hit our numbers with just that. So hopefully that makes sense to you, Kago. So, but I appreciate the question. Any other questions? Before I sort of wrap up here? I'll just start the wrap up process. But if you got any more questions, feel free to write them in. And also, what I like is if anybody gives me topics. So if you want to give me a topic, I'm happy to talk about any of the other topics the following weeks. But in closing, as I kind of close this up, if you would just give me that thumbs up, I definitely, whatever platform you're looking at, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, give that thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you for those that already did. Next week, I'm traveling a bunch. Don't know if I'm going to be able to squeeze this in between on next Wednesday. So I don't know if what the schedule will be like. It might be not till the following week. But if you got any questions, you can reach out to me on social media. It's the easiest way to contact me is, just reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Facebook is probably better than LinkedIn. I'll tell you that. So reach out to me on Facebook. And then again, if you have any interest in partnering, getting in on our deals, mentoring, or our fund, fill out that Google form and we'll get in touch with you and you'll be able to see our deals. Okay. That's all for this week. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you for joining. And I look forward to talking with you, connecting with you guys, and we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye.